You know, the other day I did a video on Ruger revolvers where a lot of people thought I was being a little bit critical of them. I really wasn't being that critical of them. I was just talking about some factual information about them that a lot of people overlook. So a lot of people think I don't like Rugers. I actually do like Rugers. I've got several Rugers, especially Ruger pistols. I love their single action pistols especially. And the Vaquero here is no exception to that. I think this is a great gun. In fact, if you shoot cowboy action, this is the best gun you can get in my opinion. This is what I bought this for. I have a matching set of these. But there is one thing about most Ruger pistols I really can't stand. I mean, just hate it. And that is their hammers. Ruger makes the worst hammers of any handgun manufacturer. As you can see here, it just looks like it's cut out of a piece of plate steel. Very little work done to it. No contouring, nothing. Just a nasty, flat-sided hammer. And the double action hammers are no better. Just look at this. It looks like it was cut out of a piece of plate steel. No contouring, no shaping, no beveling, nothing. It just looks awful. Now, that isn't the case with all their guns, though. Some of their guns have some pretty nice hammers on it. Some of their single action guns, that is. Now, the Blackhawks actually tend to have better hammers, and this one is a Bisley hammer, so it's even nicer. As you can see, there's a little bit of shape to it, so it doesn't look so plain and cheap. Now, you might say to yourself, well, there's not a lot you can do about that. Well, there is something you can actually do, especially with the Vaqueros. With the Vaqueros, you can change out the hammers to a Blackhawk hammer. They will accept a Blackhawk hammer as a drop-in part. You really don't have to do any work. If you want to put a Bisley hammer in it, you have to do some work, but for a regular standard Blackhawk hammer, it just drops right in. So I have ordered a couple of the standard Blackhawk hammers here from Brownells, and I'm going to install them in my Vaqueros tonight and let you see the difference. Now, before I get started here, I'm going to put down this gray pad so I don't get oil on my filming surface. I've done that a lot of times before, and believe me, oil does not come out of felt. So I'm putting this down, and then I'll get started disassembling the gun. First thing you're going to do is take off the grips. That's often easier said than done because it doesn't want to come off. There. Now you're going to need a small punch. And what you're going to do is slightly cock the hammer here, and you'll see a little hole in the mainspring bar right there. Just stick the punch in that hole to keep that tight. Then you're going to see 2 screws on the back of the gun right here, and you're going to see 3 screws on the bottom of the gun. Take those out. Now, when you take out the 2 screws that are side by side on the bottom, there's going to be one that's longer. Remember which side you took that out of. It's very important to put it back in the right one. Then once you have all those screws out, just pull it apart. Comes apart pretty easily. Now there's 2 little plungers and springs you need to pay attention to here. One is right here in front of the trigger. That shouldn't be any problem, shouldn't come out for you. And there's one right here on the back of the gun right behind the cylinder. Make sure you don't lose those. Now you're going to see this little bar right there, the one right in front of my fingernail. You're going to need to push that down when you push out your first pin because that holds the pin in place. And this pin right here above the trigger is the one you're going to push out as you're pushing that down. Now I like to use a brass punch for these pins here just so I don't mar up the surface if I slip any. Then you're just going to pull your trigger out. And there's going to be some other little parts in here that want to come out also once you push out this pin right here. And this one should release the hammer. And the hammer will just slide right out and take some other parts with it here. And now I'm ready to put the other hammer back in here. Basically just take the parts that just came out with the old hammer, put them in the same position with the new hammer, and slide them up into place. Then I can stick the little pin back in the hammer here once I have the new hammer in position. And remember, the little notch on this pin goes towards the left side of the gun, coming in from the right side of the gun. Because remember that longer screw that was over here on the left side? That goes up and holds into that little notch right there and keeps this from sliding out. Now it's just a matter of putting back the trigger and the cylinder latch here. If you have any trouble putting these back, there's lots of videos online that tells you how to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and stick them back in there because this isn't really an assembly-disassembly video. The only slightly tricky part about putting the trigger back in is you got to pull this back out. This right here is the little firing pin block. You got to pull it back out far enough that you can get it into that little hole on the bottom of the trigger. And it should all fall right back into place. Okay, now I can put in the little trigger bar here. Now remember, the little notch goes towards the right-hand side of the gun. This is upside down. This is the right-hand side of the gun, the side that has the gate on it. The little notch goes towards that side. And you got to push the little bar down here to get it in. Once you get it in, it's just a case of wiggling it through all the little holes. And yes, I know I said wiggling it through all the little holes. Let's act our ages. Okay, now I'll put the little plunger back in its hole here. The little plunger in its hole, and it's right above the screw hole. Don't get your holes confused. Story of my life. Then just put the two pieces back together, and the hard part comes here in a minute. I don't know if you can see that little spring in there, but you got to push that up so that this can slide back together. And that will go up above the trigger to give it tension. Now that I've got the pieces held together, I can start putting the screws back in. I always start with the long screw. Remember, that's on the left-hand side right behind the trigger. That holds in the little pin that holds the trigger on, so I like to put that one in first. Okay, I've got the cylinder back in here. I don't think I showed you me taking the cylinder out. I just took it out a second ago just to make sure that the little arm that goes under the door here was in place, and it was. But now it's back in there, and the hammer's back on, and the hammer is now cocking, and the cylinder is turning. Cylinder turning is always a plus. I just got to put the grips back on and I'll be done here. And this was literally like a 5-minute job. Maybe 7 or 8 minutes because I was filming. But if I wasn't filming, it's literally like 5 minutes. So there you have it, before and after. And as you can see, the hammer in my left hand here, it looks a lot better. It looks like a higher end hammer. It looks like a lot more care was taken in producing that piece. And it's not just looks. If you look at the pad on the hammers here, on the one in my left hand, it's much thicker and wider, a more comfortable place to put your thumb. On the one on the right, the original hammer, it's very thin. It almost cuts into your thumb every time you thumb the hammer on it. So it's just not comfortable and doesn't look good. So I made the switch. Hey, I just wanted to say here, for the sake of full disclosure, that was not actually before and after a minute ago. That was really before and before, because I had one gun that I'd already changed the hammer on, mainly so that I could see if I remembered how to do it, and another gun that I hadn't. And now this is the actual after. Both guns have the Black Hawk hammers here. Just wanted to say that in case someone noticed there were different serial numbers when I was showing them and freaked out, because you know how YouTube viewers can be. You ain't even my real dad.